Okay, letter up.
Sewer Commission meeting Tuesday, May 19th, 2015, 7 p.m. Call to order. In attendance, Commissioner Higgins, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Demko, Superintendent of the DPW, and Steve Dempsey, Supervisor, Liz Welch, and then the audience is Tom Patch. And also, I forgot Steve Peterson, Weston Sampson. So the first item is Weston and Sampson. Oh, minutes of the meeting.
They're actually not ready.
Not ready?
So I'll have to do it the next
Okay, next meeting.
So we can table that till next week?
Okay.
Go next meeting?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
And we have Weston and Sampson contract amendment.
So this is in relation to the closeout of the Ship and Cottage project, engineering services. So we acknowledged substantial completion back in September, and basically closed out our services then. Since that time, shortly thereafter in October and November, there was a lot of back and forth with the contractor, negotiations on some of the additional costs and credits. If you remember, the final balancing change order happened in the November timeframe, and there was a lot of back and forth negotiations to get the contractor.
What additional costs do we have in there? What additional costs?
It's time. It's engineers. It's people's time to deal with these issues, basically. It's not materials.
Steve, that's in the contract anyhow, is that right?
Yeah.
That's in the scope of the work and the...
And these were, these were out of scope because the time, the time ended in September.
Yeah.
And so basically this amendment extends the time, through now and out a couple more months just to help you as you finalize. The final paving has now happened out there, and we're closing in on all the final costs for the project.
Okay.
And all that stuff. So
Thank you.
This was just, so this would be,
Was that
amendment just to bring
paving
up-
part of the North Street too, or is that additional?
Yep. Yeah, the piece at North and Cottage.
Yeah, do we have to pay for that or
Yes. The answer is yes.
even though they made a mistake, right?
Who made a mistake?
Well, on the manhole there,
We have to pay for it.
yeah. Well, I don't know, sometimes the errors and omissions cover something like that. Yours does,
Errors and omissions can cover things, yeah, but I don't know what you're talking about. There was a
Well,
manhole in the street
in
that
other
we
words-
had to get to.
There was a manhole that was an electric manhole instead of a sewer manhole.
Yeah.
And otherwise, if we had known it was that, we wouldn't have opened up the street to get down there.
Well, we knew there was an electric manhole there. We thought there was a longer stub coming out of the gravity manhole. We didn't have records on how far the stub in the gravity manhole came out, so we had to go out further. When they opened up the street, they had to go out further to get to where the stub was.
Yeah.
And,
So we're having to pay for that pavement, then I take it, right?
yes. Yeah, they had to dig it up, yeah.
Steve, does the extension in time for the services now, is there any sort of warranty walk down that you do towards the end of the warranty period that you'd need to be here for, or
We're available if the town wants to do another walk, but the contractor's work, we already did that for the contractor's work.
Okay.
And went through their whole punch list and made sure that they completed that.
Yeah.
At this point, the town has now come through and paved the road. One of the big things with this project is they held off on a planned paving project overlay until these utilities went in.
Right.
So the contractor did his work, cleaned up, met his punch list. We had the negotiations back and forth about, what on the punch list he was entitled to payment for. None of the stuff on the punch list he was entitled to payment for. It was all punch list items. But so now basically that was all approved. We gave him, we released his retainage. He's still got the 1-year warranty on anything. But the work that has happened more recently now is the paving of the road. So
Right.
at this point, unless you have issues with the sewer itself, the contractor is free and clear of his work in the road.
So this amendment would be for
This
really
is
final...
services since September
yeah.
till now and covers us for the next
Okay.
couple of months to help you guys wrap this
Okay.
thing up.
Punch list, basically, you talking about?
What's that?
What's it, a punch list that you're doing, or what?
They did the punch list back
Okay.
in October, November timeframe. Yeah, so that is complete. The contract is done. He's been done for a while.
Good. Do we know what that amount
Tom,
is?
you have a question?
Yeah. Given the fact that it seems that on the North Street sewer line issue, that it's now apparently come out that the money that was paid by the contractor was not as a result of the defect in the installation of the pipe, and I believe Mr. Higgins said in front of the selectmen that that was what the problem was, that the pipe was improperly installed.
No, that's
And the
not.
money went to, we played a good replay
Tom,
video. I'm
Tom.
saying, I'm
Excuse
sitting
me,
there,
I'm
heard what he
sorry.
said, but anyways.
Finish speaking.
the-
Let me answer him.
The point being is that the money apparently went to pay MWRA for the water that was pumped in. And so now there is no money to pay for that defect in the installation of that pipe. You know, it would seem that basically what you have here is, on the face of it, you know, a situation where somebody was being paid to do due diligence to determine the design for the septic, for the sewer on Shipping Cottage Street. And, you know, as late as, I mean, the original design, I think I even pointed out to the DEP, you know, how are they going to get into these the manhole line on North Street without having to cut into North Street. And this is well before this whole thing came up. All of a sudden, now they did a redesign to have the people on Cottage Street. All of them have to do, I think almost all of them had to do. We're going to have to do a grinder pump. And then some people on Cottage Street came in and were very upset about that. And then the selectmen voted to allow North Street to be opened up for the line. So the point being here is that, you know, on the face of it, it seems like somebody had a duty, contractual duty, to ascertain a design. They were supposed to do due diligence, and they purported to do due diligence, but it turns out that it was wrong. So the question is whether or not there's any liability there. And I think, you know, certainly engineers are going to sit here and say, we didn't do anything wrong. And I think, with all due respect, I think your charge to, as the commission, would be to consult, counsel to determine whether or not there is, in fact, some liability, so that if there is, that, you know, whether it results in litigation or results in a settlement, you know, the issue can be resolved rather than taking, you know, the position of the engineer. I mean, I'm not shocked that the engineer would say they didn't do anything wrong, but on the face of it, they had a contractual obligation to do the design, to do the due diligence consistent with that. It turned out, whatever they relied on, you know, and if there was nothing for them to rely on, then why did they do the design? You don't assume, because we all know what the assume means, principle results in. And, you know, that shouldn't, just because the town is purporting to 100% better the people in the neighborhood, doesn't mean that this board or this commission shouldn't, you know, fulfill its charge to determine whether or not that cost should be put on to the people who are being bettered. I think you have an obligation to look into it and consult counsel.
Tom, just one point that I'd like to make to you, okay? When I spoke to the design issues in the pipeline in North Street, the pipeline that I was referencing, and I was very clear about it, that this pipeline had nothing to do with the sewer connection from Ship Street onto North Street. It had nothing to do with it. My statement was simply that the pipeline that was put in by the contractor for the MBTA, okay, did a poor job of installing that entire pipeline from a point to a point. But there was no part of that contract or that tie-in involved in that statement. That's not what I said.
And it's not what I said. If you listen to what I said was...
That's what you said.
No, I didn't. If you were listening, what I was saying is that the problem is with the North Street pipe, the North Street, the one with the dip in it, okay? Because nothing was ever done to determine the liability of the improper installation of that pipe, the money that the town did get from the contractor, the $150,000 or whatever it was, apparently was in payment for water that was pumped into the line by the contractor, which the sewer commission had to pay to the MWRA. That's what I was referring to. In that scenario, we've already had a scenario where the commission failed at that time to apparently investigate, consult with council, and determine whether or not, independent of the money, the cost of pumping the water into the system that the sewer commission was going to get a bill for, whether or not there was additional liability of the contractor, which then that money could be used to repair that pipe. I'm not talking about the pipe coming down from Ship Street or Cottage Street into North Street. I'm just pointing that out as a prior example where the failure to consult with council to determine whether or not the liability has now left the sewer commission, the rate holders, I guess, or rate payers, whatever, in a position where that pipe, who's going to pay for the cost of correction of that pipe? So, this is an opportunity where, again, now getting on to the current issue, which is the issue of, who's going to pay for the cost of cutting into North Street. And so we have a situation where the engineer was supposed to do due diligence to do a design. For whatever reason, their design did not initially come up showing that this was going to have to be cut into North Street. Now, and then we found out that they did. He's trying to say because the pipe stub that they thought was there was not as long as they thought it was. Well, based on what? I'm just saying from a legal, my personal opinion, from a legal analysis, I think you have to, you're compelled to consult with council to determine whether or not council feels that there's some liability on the part of whoever was doing the design, the engineer, whoever it was. Because if their reliance on that information was unreasonable, okay, there's a level of negligence on their part.
Yeah.
Tom,
I think you're going to stay on the subject matter.
Yeah.
The subject matter was Ship and Cottage Street, not North Street. So
I am staying on the subject matter. What I'm talking about
This is the amendment.
This is just the amendment.
Just
This
the
has nothing
amendment.
to do with that.
yeah, it's the amendment.
Just the amendment. It's.
Steve,
Any
you have
questions?
anything you want to say on that?
I mean, I think, the amendment is
Yeah,
not
no,
related to the work
Yeah,
that you're talking about now.
Yeah, that's a reasonable explanation, okay? I think that's a reasonable explanation from engineering, okay?
Okay.
Yes.
I think we should
So I
make a
think that-
motion to accept the contract and, amendment.
You want to make a motion?
I'm making the motion to accept the contract the amendment.
Second motion?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You want to sign it so we get it over with?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Take plenty of time signing so we get this.
I'll sign it on the second line, you sign it on the first line, all right?
You can sign it for me.
No, I can't sign your name, Eddie. That's how we'd really get. Okay, today's date is the 19th. Okay, did you bring a pen?
Yeah, I got one there.
So this is three.
Oh, there's three, okay, there's 3 copies.
Did you keep 2, right, Liz? The town keeps 2.
Okay.
Also, I'm done with that, I could give you an update on Bayberry
Okay.
pump station under this, just for your information, I guess. Use that. Right, they're all set, okay. So, I guess just as an update, we've been talking about the improvements to the ejector station out at Bayberry Road. So where we're at now is we've advertised the project. It's going to appear, we submitted the ad last week, so it'll appear tomorrow in the Central Register. So plans and specs will be available for contractors tomorrow through our online bidding service. They can request them. I brought a set here for the for DPW and Sewer Department to have here. The local ad is going to appear tomorrow in the Patriot Ledger.
Yes.
So you'll have both your advertisements. And the bid opening is scheduled for June 11th, Thursday, June 11th. So there's 3 weeks for contractors to...
June 11th?
Yeah, so the bid opening is 11 a.m., June 11th, at the DPW offices.
What time is it?
11 a.m.
Yeah. How long do you think that project's going to take?
They have until, the way it's set up now is we anticipate sometime after right after the 4th of July is when they'll get their notice to proceed, about a month to process all the paperwork. And then they'll have to order the equipment. They won't be able to do much work until they get the equipment, but it shouldn't be a long lead time. So we anticipate them being out there probably September, October timeframe doing the actual work. They have until December to have it buttoned up and done, based on the time frame in the contract. Once they have the equipment on site, there's really everything is gutting out the existing station and putting the new equipment in there and converting it from the ejector type station to a more conventional submersible type
Do
station.
we have any skater ability in there? Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
okay.
We do. We're putting a
Mission control.
control
Yeah,
system.
yeah. Okay.
Steve, I'll leave these with you. You also have the PDFs I emailed to you guys today, PDFs of these documents if you need them electronically.
Up here, will be fenced off during the construction? Or?
No, not at this point, no. I mean, if something needs to be, but I mean, their work will be pretty well contained. So they're on.
I was thinking, there's a lot of youngsters in the neighborhood.
There won't be an open hole.
No,
Okay.
no.
There's
There
no
won't be an open
excavation.
hole or anything, so.
We're waiting for Susan Murphy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
We can go on to the no, that's hers, betterment, right?
yeah, yeah. Okay. So we can, everybody, we'll
Unless-
wait the 10 minutes or so that,
Unless do you want to discuss consolidation agreement? Discuss number 4? Is there any update on that, or?
yeah, we were going to talk about that with the rules and regulations and on the betterment. The changes that I submitted, you said that you had looked at those and
Yep.
okay.
So we have those at this point, and we're in a position to finalize that,
Oh, that's great. That's good.
submit it. I think I think there's still a little more discussion on the sewer extension policy and some of the fees that we need to have. I know Ken, you made some suggestions on
Yeah.
kind of reformatting that a little bit.
Do you work on the minimums too?
No, they've already, the engineering has already completed their work,
Yeah.
and Susan has, I guess, completed their review, and,
What, for the regulations?
yeah. Is that,
Just the better.
Susan has some, I believe she has some comments
okay,
and changes. That's why
Changes, yeah.
I was suggesting to go to the consolidation agreement, since she won't be here for 10 minutes, try to get that out of the way.
Yeah, okay, Ed,
Yeah, the consolidation.
conservation agreement, how we doing?
Well, I had a meeting with still some points we have to discuss. Town administrator, myself.
Do you have another appointment to continue on the process?
Yeah, we spoke of things that we agreed on, but there's other,
Did you write it, is it in writing?
Betty Foley was there.
Okay, you're all set. Okay, all right. You might want to, Eric Haskell from
Yeah,
advisory
Eric,
here.
do
Eric,
you have any comments?
anything?
Anything?
Okay.
We're waiting for Susan.
All right, for Susan, okay, all right. Good.
Who was the other gentleman there?
Sir?
That 25 Ship Street,
Where?
25 Ship.
Ship,
Okay.
okay. Is there something you want to bring up, or?
I didn't have anything to do tonight.
Okay.
All right. Welcome aboard. Yeah.
So there's no update on the consolidation regulations? Is that what I'm hearing? Just so we
Right.
get it right?
Consolidation agreement, right?
Well, we discussed it, but there's things that have got to be reviewed on a discussion so that we come to an agreement.
So you're going to discuss it with these guys too, the other commissioners?
We can go to an executive session, we have to on a contract.
Don't think that's
I don't,
correct under this
Yeah.
arrangement.
yeah.
Well, I think
We
it
can-
is. If you have a contract, you have a right to go into executive session.
It's not a personnel contract. I know we've done it before, all in the open.
Well, I know the selectmen did the contract, the 18,000 acres they bought, and they went to executive session, so it's,
I'd like to,
You've got a follow-up meeting planned with the town administrator
Yeah.
to go over a few more details.
yeah. I mean,
And then bring it back for a vote, right?
right?
well, I have some.
Either that or we go into executive session.
Well, I have some things that I wanted to give you, okay, in that agreement. There's some things there that I thought we should talk about. Let me see if I brought that with me tonight, Ed, because I probably left it home because oh, here we go. I have a draft of a consolidation agreement that I've been working on in hopes that we could get together and go over some of this stuff, but I did make some add-ons, and like there's a few changes that need to be made, like on page 4, we need to put the DPW administration office at 25 Bear Code Park Road, things like that, and everything else is DPW sewer. I have no problem with that. And there were some other little bits of stuff here, that I think that they should be responsible for over there, that we should not be responsible for, one of which is they've been very, very, very good about providing a space if I want to go up there to look at a map or a plan, or if I want to look at something that I can look at. I can go right upstairs, they make all the records available.
Well, that's one of the
all
things
the
that I spoke
information.
about the administrator today.
Yeah, and,
He's going to have an office available for us.
well, I don't know if we need an office, but we just need to have
Well,
access.
I would like to have an office
Well,
available.
let me finish, okay?
because if you want to go over and review some plans or something, you've got to have a place that you can sit, so.
Yeah, and we have a terrific place upstairs on the second floor that's
Okay.
very peaceful and quiet, and nobody bothers you, and,
I think, I reviewed that with him, and I'll bring it up.
well,
as part of the
Well,
agreement?
that's something that, I don't think we really need a, per se, office space that's dedicated to.
Well, that's your
us.
opinion.
That's my opinion,
Okay.
okay? And it's also my opinion that the DPW sewer department should have all the responsibility of hiring and firing in that department. I don't think we should get involved in that. We're not the operating company. We don't work with these folks. We don't have any way to gauge what
When you
they're
say
doing.
hiring and firing, I brought that up today.
I know you did,
Yeah.
and.
How do you know I did? You weren't there.
Well, you've been bringing it up for 9 months now.
No.
Yeah, yes, you have to.
No, I brought it up today, and we reviewed it.
Yeah, and, that's just I just don't think we need to be involved in that. We don't have the ability, first of all, to judge the employees and the supervisors. We don't have
We
that.
only have 3 employees, really, when you come down to it.
Well, they have 3 employees, and they have a department
Yeah, I
supervisor.
understand that.
Yeah.
Department supervisor, administrative secretary, and a part-time. Okay, that's under us.
Well, there are part-time people, or they're in the office. We don't need a full-time staff. We just don't need it.
Yeah, the way it was, the original agreement was written, that we will be responsible for hiring and firing, and that's going to stay.
Well, I disagree with that, but I don't
Commission,
think...
chairman speaks for the commission.
Yes, I understand, but I have a right to speak too.
You can speak, go ahead.
Yeah, that's my view. We just don't have the ability, okay, to manage that kind of a program. For employees review, for instance, and if there are situations that come up in the department, we're not involved in that. That's up to Randy and Steve to run the department and to manage the department and the employees and keep the records, not us.
Well, you're going to a different thing when you talk about the records, administrative secretary.
Well, no, I'm talking about the employee's performance, for instance,
well-
whatever the issues are that are personnel issues
That's
belong
human
over there.
resources is available for that, isn't it?
No, we don't have a human resources.
Yes, we do. We have Dave Basler as a human resource.
Yeah, but he doesn't have anything to do with the operation of the department. He
Hiring and firing, he does.
Well, he may have
Yeah.
the ability to provide applications and
Oh,
screen
they have
candidates.
hearings, they have hearings too.
But all of the hiring should go right through there. They know what they need. We don't.
I disagree, so
Okay,
we'll leave it that way.
okay. And I think it should be a permanent agreement, Eddie. I don't think we should go out, I don't think we should be discussing this agreement again. Once we get it squared away, that's the end of it.
That was the original, we review every year, so that wasn't, nothing to do
What?
with you.
For what?
That's the way it was written.
Well,
All right.
if I had my way, I'd dispose
Well,
of this
you're not
agreement.
going to have your way all the time, you know?
No, but I can have it once in a while. But I'm just saying, there's nothing in there, Ed, that's going to affect us at all. But it does affect the operating end of the sewer committee.
We're responsible to the ratepayers for monies that are expended from our budget, and that's part of it. So there is something we do.
Yeah, no, we have certain responsibilities, of course we do. But the operating, we do not have any operating responsibility yet. We just don't. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the ability. Final word.
That's yours, okay.
Thank you.
You want to say anything?
I think from a budget perspective, we do have
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
obligation, and I think
Yeah.
we do, with the assistance of
Yeah.
the sewer department, in preparing and reviewing the annual operating budget, which drives a lot of some of the things that you're talking
Yeah, oh,
about.
of course it
So
does.
if there was additional staff requested, it would have to be proposed in a budget, and we would have input into that.
And that's part of our operation.
Yeah,
But
and I
if that
think
were-
that's to remain.
Right, but the actual,
Day-to-day.
once
human
that's
resources.
approved, once those funds are approved for different things, it's up to those guys to...
So if, if, for example, they requested a staff position for,
Yeah.
a formalized asset management
Yeah.
system, for example, we would have input as to whether or not that got
Right.
funded.
That's right.
But we would not, and I don't think we would want to take on the responsibility of doing all of the screening of candidates and
Exactly.
hiring of candidates and managing the human resources.
That's all I'm
part of it.
saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom?
I just want to get a point of clarification going back to the regulations. So, if I'm to understand, Mr. Higgins has come up with some changes that he gave to the engineer. Have you, Eddie?
What's that?
Well, I'm just trying to get a feel for whether or not, because obviously,
Who gave changes to the engineer?
am I incorrect in saying that, Bob? You
Yeah,
gave-
that's correct. There were some changes, and, things that I wanted to look at.
Comments.
Comments. Not change, but comments
On what?
on some of the paragraphs and some of the issues in that draft,
Sewer regs.
in the sewer rates.
Not the consolidation.
Yeah.
Not the
sure.
cons- Yeah, so we've moved off of
We've
the,
moved off.
off of the consolidation
Consolidation.
agreement. We've
Right.
reopened,
I'm just trying to get a feel, because, these proposed betterment regulations were only put up on the town's website, I think last Thursday, they were dated the 13th. And, I noticed on the agenda tonight, there's a possible vote on these, which I think is,
You think we should have more time to review it?
I think anytime you're talking about people's property rights, constitutional property rights, and due process rights, which betterments implicate, I think you've got to be very careful what you do. And because the bottom line is, if it's not done correctly, the town ends up eating the cost of that. So it's something that has to be done.
Are we done with the consolidation agreement?
Yeah.
Can we stick to one?
Yeah, we gotta stick to the
Liz is trying to take notes, and now we're jumping around here,
Yeah,
so.
All right, look, what we've done with this consolidation agreement, okay?
All right, that wasn't, I didn't hear
I'm
that.
gonna make a motion to table the consolidation agreement till the next meeting
In June.
in June.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
So, again, I'm just trying to, because I think Mr. Giles here, and I'm here, basically, because we're affected people, I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out whether or not these purported new regulations are going to be attempted to be applied retroactively to the Ship Street, Cottage Street project. Mr. Higgins told me last meeting that that wasn't the case, but I don't understand why there's a push to have these betterment regulations done as opposed to have it done as a universal thing with all the regulations, unless there's some agenda that's going on here that we're not being told about. And I think, given everything that's going on with the sewer commission, particularly the Ship Street, Cottage Street project, and as the people that are being reportedly 100% bettered, I think we're entitled to know what's going on with all candor. What the agenda here is with these new betterment regulations, because I haven't heard a reason why these betterment regulations should be advanced and vetted and treated differently than the whole package of regulations.
So would you like another meeting on it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, because it's on the agenda tonight, if you guys are not going to vote on this tonight, and I just want to know whether or not there's going to be a vote on it, because it sounds like there can't be, because people are coming up, even internally, you're coming up with your own comments and issues and so forth that the public hasn't even seen. I mean, how do we intelligently and informed manner discuss this? That's all I'm getting to.
Yeah, we were waiting
Cut off
for
the debate, will you, Ed?
Susan Murphy to come in,
Yeah,
right?
wait till Susan Murphy gets here. Just cut off the debate on this issue till then. We're just going around in circles here, okay?
So that's your opinion, Bob. You're not affected like I'm affected, okay? And you're the one who's not being truthful, Bob, because I asked you directly.
If I were you, I would not say
No
that.
personalities involved here.
Okay, I would not say
It's
that.
not
You're on
personality.
public
I'm
record,
talking to you
okay?
as a commissioner. Bob, don't threaten me. I'll take it to federal district court.
But-
and I'll have the judge slap you.
No, here we are. We're all set here now.
Okay.
Susan said,
Hi, everyone.
bail us out.
How are you? I'm sorry I'm late. I had a conflict with another.
No problem. We were getting on the betterment regulations.
All right, so you want to go through, so what we have, you want to get it?
With all of, like, Gene's notes and everything.
I have that.
It's downstairs.
Why don't you go through step by step so everyone is
Yep.
Okay, so
on
what's
the same
been,
page?
Yep.
yeah, so what's been posted right now is just the betterment regs themselves,
Okay.
the proposed regs. So you guys have that document, I can kind
Right.
of walk us through
You
it.
can walk us through it.
So
Yeah.
that,
Sure.
so that we're all on the same page of what it states. I think we could start without Susan. So section, I guess if we just take it section by section, we don't have to go line by line, but section 1 really just establishes the commission's authority to levy assessments. It references the general laws and other acts that give you the authority to levy betterments. And that's the gist of section 1. So section 2, unit method of sewer assessment. There are a couple of different options on how to assess betterments, and this is laying out how the commission will assess betterments, and it's naming the uniform unit method. Basically equates one single-family home to one sewer betterment unit. You can do it, but that's what's proposed in these regs. And establishes that.
On the regulations?
Yeah, this betterment regulations are going on now.
I know, but isn't there already a law in effect about how to assess the betterment on street frontage?
Whatever the old, so there's
There's a
regs.
mass general law.
There's an old
Yeah,
regulation, but we're updating them, that's what we're
There's
doing.
the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a betterment procedure. It's a legal document on how it has to be done. That's correct.
So that's not a local ordinance?
That is not,
No.
that's a state ordinance.
Thank you. So if I understand, you're asking the,
Would you like a copy?
Is this what was posted?
Yes.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, it's all posted on the website.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, we started going through it, so we were just kind of walking it through section by section. So just talk about section 1, basically giving them, establishes the authority through mass general laws and special acts or acts. And in section 2, the uniform unit method as the proposed method for assessing betterments. That's what that covers on section 2. Yeah?
Yeah, on section 2.
Yeah.
So the town under both the special act and the mass general laws, town meeting, can establish the method of assessment. So I think what section 2 is doing is setting forth a process if town meeting authorizes the unit method, because you have to kind of apply the units in a formula type of way. So that's, right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's several, within section 2, there's several paragraphs. The first one, being about the uniform unit method, and then it goes into timing of assessment, establishes, final betterments will be assessed when all project costs are known. There is, you have the ability within the regs to do partial or estimated assessments, which would be on projects that are multi-year projects, and you need to collect some of the betterment monies to start paying for the project before it's actually complete. That would be a larger multi-year projects, and there's a whole nother, there are guidelines with how you can do that. With the estimated assessments, you have to be sure that you don't collect more than 50% of the ultimate betterment with the first billing, and then you collect the rest later. So you have to follow those regs when you get into those situations. The other thing is determining what the sewer unit value is. So you're going to come up with how many sewer units there are, but what's the value per unit, and it's basically the cost of the project divided by how many units there are to be assessed.
Right.
Will determine what a sewer unit value is.
Like we did in Cottage Street and Ship.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a question. I don't, did you get the town treasurer's comments? Did you?
I have not seen
You didn't
them.
get that? So if it's okay,
on this?
there were some comments that Jean Montgomery provided And
On
if
payment?
it makes sense, I can just note them as we're going, and then we can kind
That's
of
fine.
discuss them, so as you get to those sections. The first comment that she made was in section 2.1, in the last sentence. So the last sentence says, in the order of assessment, they shall designate the owner of each parcel. Her comment is, well, under chapter 80, section 4, which is so chapter 83 is for sewers, but it also brings in chapter 80, which is for betterments generally. And so certain sections of chapter 80 will apply in connection with betterments under sewers under chapter 83. Her comment is sewer assessments are a lien against the property, not the owner. And that's true, but there's a difference in language in chapter 83, where chapter 83 talks about assessing the owners, whereas chapter 80 talks about making assessments against the land. So I guess because you guys work with other towns, were you basing it on language that you have generally been adopted in other towns?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's common. The way that language is written is common to other regs that we've seen.
The sewer statute does reference owners in the assessment sections in chapter 83.
Yeah.
So we can talk to Jean about that and tell her where that language is coming from. Okay.
All right. So we would now, does she have any more on 2?
That was it in section 2.
Okay.
The owners switch owners, and you just switch them.
Okay, so that's basically how we come up with the assessments. Section 3 is more specific about the unit designation and how we determine how many units a property is. And these regs right now are very specific to residential properties. So this is, again, it defines it, under the uniform unit method, everything equates to a single-family home. So if you go down to 3.2, it just very clearly states, when you get into single-family, two-family, three-family home is 3 units, and so on and so forth. Again, just that's the premise for the whole uniform unit method, is everything equates to a single-family home. And then for undeveloped lots, you would go to a formula. You would still assess, if you fronted a lot that's not developed, you would assess it based on the zoning and how many residential lots could be built, or how many residential homes could be built. So if it's a larger lot, it would be based on what the zoning would allow as far as how many units could be assessed to that.
So Jean had a kind of a comment, just a note on that. So the way this is worded, it says undeveloped lots, excuse me, shall be converted into dwelling units on the basis of the maximum number of buildable residential lots using applicable minimum frontage and area under the zoning. Her comment is there's no way to get back on over-assessment, so she says better to assess conservatively. I think what she's saying, you don't want to be in a situation where you give a large assessment to a owner of an undeveloped parcel, and then if it doesn't get that developed, they can never get that money back. I understand what she's saying, and I think that's intended to be kind of resident or property owner friendly. I mean, the statute does say that potential sewer units shall be calculated on the basis of zoning men in effect. So I think that the language that Steve has proposed is consistent with the statute. So I want to make sure that the commission hears Jean's comments and that there's a chance to kind of discuss it and think about it. But I'm not sure that there's a way to do it conservatively in the way Jean is saying and be consistent with the statute.
Would that be like 0 Rockland Street that we talked about undeveloped?
Yeah, well, let's say you have an undeveloped parcel that's, for sake of argument, 4 acres, and you're in a, residence C, which we don't, let's say residence A, because that's where we have sewer right now, and it's 20,000 square lot, so I'm going to round, because I'm not a great math person, so let's say that's 4 acres, that's potentially 8 lots. I think her comment is, well, that's under zoning. Well, what if there's a giant wetland in the middle or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think she's saying, maybe be conservative because they could be assessed a large assessment and then they can't get it back if they can't actually do that in the future. But I think to be consistent with the statute, this language, as Steve proposes, is consistent with the statute. So that's, the pros and cons on that.
Did I,
This gentleman wants to
Is there
come.
any- I know the Emmels have one lot. Is that the only lot that's undeveloped? We're only talking about one?
You're talking about a specific project
You're talking
now.
about a specific project.
Right.
Is that the regulations are intended to be
for all
in that
projects?
general. But yes, that's an example
Yeah.
where they have enough frontage and land area to have 2 lots, and in fact, they have an approved plan to create 2 lots, but that's a specific. But this is general, this is assuming it's completely undeveloped land. So you just have an undeveloped parcel where sewer is going to be, installed.
Just a brief question.
Yep.
Did I read where you can defer a payment on an undeveloped lot for a 5-year period someplace in the
Yeah, we haven't
regulations?
gotten to that section yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
Would that also, like, what you're talking undeveloped, would that take into consideration 40B or something coming in there?
No, so it doesn't, it's only based on what's allowed under zoning.
Okay.
So 40B is outside of zoning.
Okay.
You could have an 8-acre parcel, and it really depends on sort of the shape of the parcel. So you might have an 8-acre parcel that has very little current street frontage, but affords you the opportunity to bring a road in, at
Right.
which point, when the road came in, then that might be an opportunity to assess the betterments there. But you might also have a parcel that enjoys quite a bit of frontage on a road and is very shallow, and you could just cut it right up, and they could each attach onto the source. So it's kind of a difficult, there's not a precise formula for this.
Right, and when the, commission starts talking about the non-residential, the more commercial, which, when you get into that specific, potentially if there is going to be a project up in South Hingham, all the business owners in there will probably be very interested in how you start doing those calculations. It gets a little bit more involved. You have to come up with some reasonable basis, whether it's DEP gallons per day or some variation on that that's based on town-specific conditions or those kinds of things. So it's not perfect. It's kind of like how, how you pay for sewer, right? You pay for every gallon of water you use, but not, but maybe some of that went to water your lawn or fill your kiddie pool. So it's not always a perfect, calculation, mathematical calculation.
But you're still trying to equate it back to a
Right.
typical
Something-
single-family home.
Right.
Whether you use water use for existing properties or Title V design criteria for an undeveloped lot, what it could be built as. And there is also ultimately language on compensatory fees for properties that change over
Right.
time.
Right.
So, if you, make certain assumptions, and then when the property is developed, it's not what you assumed it was going to be, there is language that allows you to revisit it based on, looking at what you assumed it would be and assessed it based on and what it actually ended up becoming.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a more complicated calculation, because, at the end of the day, you can never collect more in assessments than the cost of the project overall. So there's a lot of math that would go into those types of situations, so.
So if you're, sorry to kind of go on about this, but so a single 8-acre parcel for that, if it enjoyed frontage of a certain amount and could support from a zoning perspective building a single-family home, and somebody built a single-family home and they were assessed for a single-family home, then that would be fine. If they enjoyed or if they currently own adjoining parcels. So you have, even though they're in common ownership, one undeveloped parcel might get an assessment and the developed parcel might get an assessment. Is that? Yeah, possibility.
Absolutely.
So I think that, in my mind, maybe addresses what the comments that we heard from the treasurer, is that if it's a single lot currently zoned for a single-family home, would they get one unit charged? And if they happen to own two lots that are shown as two lots that are approved for building two homes, each parcel gets a betterment assessment for each parcel?
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
just coincidence that they're in common ownership?
Yes.
I mean,
No, that's-
the language of the statute is potential sewer units shall be calculated on the basis of zoning then in effect. So, it's not, but there are variations among towns in how they interpret that. Some of them, a lot of the regulations or bylaws piggyback off each other, but then there are, towns that have their own variations, and
Right.
I don't know how many different treatments you've seen of the undeveloped residential, or is this pretty standard for the ones you've worked on, for the towns that you've been in?
This is pretty standard for the ones that we've seen, as far as how they deal with it. What varies is, the percentage assessed through betterments. A lot of communities don't do 100% betterments. They'll do a certain percentage through taxes and then a percentage through betterments. So it all depends on how it's set up. But and what you were saying, with the 100% betterments, it gets, you got to be careful with the math, because you can never, collect more than 100% of the costs of the project, obviously. But yeah, this language is pretty common in the ones that we've seen. And the other thing we have in there is where you run into dual-use properties. If you come across a property that's a residential property, but they run a commercial business out of the property, there's language that covers that. They're going to pay an assessment based on each, but based on the single family and then the business also. When you run into those, that's what the dual-use properties are. As far as sewer assessment payments, Section 4 talked about payments. The way it's set up, homeowners basically have two options. When they get their betterment bill, they can pay it in full, a lump sum payment. They have 30 days to do that when they get the bill. If they don't pay it in full in that time frame, then it gets apportioned over 20 years.
And then, so there's a few comments from Jean on this. So
Okay.
in section 4.1, she just made correct that it's the tax collector of the town of Hingham rather than tax assessor. I think, was that fixed before it got circulated? Is that already in the draft, or does that need to get?
It says assessor.
It says assessor, yeah.
So
that
it's tax
should say
collector.
Tax assessor says, yeah.
And then in 4.3, I think there's a typo. It says chapter 83, section 13, but that should be chapter 80.
Okay. Yep.
Chapter 2, that of 427, 2008, right? Is that the special act that Hingham got on the? I just want to make sure that's the right reference. Yeah, chapter 427 of 2008. So that was a special act that the town of Hingham got from the legislature, that rather than using a statutory amount of interest, if the town of Hingham gets a better interest rate, they can pass that through rather than having a fixed statutory rate of interest. So it's actually a benefit to the property owner to be able to get the benefits of Hingham's better borrowing rates that it enjoys. So that's what that section 2 of Chapter 427 of Acts of 2008 refers to. Jean's comment is on the next sentence. The time period for payments to be apportioned under this section shall be 20 years. That section 13 of chapter 80. Lots of statutes. I just want to read it so that I say it correctly. So it says here in, I'm sorry, I want my section straight. There it is. It says in the statute not to exceed 20 years. And so the regulation says it shall be 20 years. And so I guess, Jean's comment is she thinks it should either mirror the statute or just take it out and follow the statute, as opposed to just in regulation state, it always has to be 20 years. So that's up to the commission how you want to handle that. In some instances, for example, you have section 13, which governs this. You don't necessarily have to have the sentence about the number of years, but if you're going to keep it in, her recommendation is to not fix it at 20 years, but make it match this, mirror the statute. So it's, up to the commission how you want to.
And I know we've run into this with other communities that did not, they, I guess it's all interpretation of the statute, but if you leave it open, you're going to have, the treasurer's going to have all different agreements. Everyone's going to pick a different time frame. And my understanding is the town does have leeway not to leave it open for people to choose whether they want it to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If they're going to apportion it, you apportion it over
20 years.
Over 20. And you can pay it off at any time. If you want to pay it off sooner. And I might be, I understand that's how it got formulated this way, is other towns have voted it this way because they got into situations where they had all these different time frames
Right, and I'm
with people.
not saying one's right, one's wrong. Just conveying the treasurer's thought on it, but it's your options are keep it as proposed, change it to mirror the statute that says not to exceed, which keeps it flexible, or take it out, in which case you're just mirroring the statute, which is those 2 and 3 are pretty much the same thing. But it's up to, it's up to the commission to decide how you want to do that.
Yeah, it'll be, it's the collector that's going to be responsible for administering it. And if the collector prefers the language to mirror the statute, then I think we should mirror the statute.
We should do that.
Should be up to 20 years, is what it says.
So, you have
Not in excess of 20 years.
I'm trying to find the exact language in this statutes are one big run-on sentence, so trying to find the exact language in here. Here we go. Apportionment, apportion all assessments or unpaid balances thereof made under this chapter into such number of equal portions not exceeding 20 as is determined by said board or as requested by the owner. So it lets the board determine it. But those are the number of payments. So it's really.
I guess the point is a good one. The communities where we've done it this way, it's come back from the treasurer that they did not want it open to be all these different options for people. They wanted it to be either you pay it in full or you portion it over 20. So that's a discussion with the treasurer.
That's logical.
Yeah, that's logical.
Which one to
apportion it over the 20 years. Well, you might want to do it 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and I think that's a.
Yeah, except I think
the treasurer is okay with it.
From the tax collector that her preference is to leave it more flexible.
Yeah.
And not define it at 20 years and have it be consistent with.
The money though.
Well, that gives. And if she's responsible for administering it, gives her, so if somebody does want to come in and pay it off in 10 years, she'll get all the money in 10 years.
Yeah.
This says it'll be 20-year payments, unless you want to, I think, as Steve mentioned, you could prepay it in full at any point.
I think the more flexibility that the property owner has, the better. you know?
So to not
to-
fix it at 20 years, but to have it be up to a maximum.
Up to a maximum of 20 years, and then,
Right, and so the
Not to
statute
exceed
says
20.
not to exceed 20.
Not to
right,
Not to exceed.
So, like, you know, if it's simpler, you can just delete that sentence, and then the provision of the statute, as it is now, or might change in the future, would govern.
Cover.
Is that simpler, do you think? Just delete the sentence?
Yeah, you've
'Cause you don't
referenced-
have-
you've referenced
you
the
don't
statute
have-
already.
You don't have to have the sentence in there, so if you want to let the flexibility and the provisions of the statute govern, you can just delete the sentence.
okay.
I think we
Does that make
should.
sense?
Yep.
You can delete it, right?
I'd like to delete it, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about the next section?
So the next, assessment deferral is something that requires a town meeting vote, and this, Hingham has voted to put this into effect, basically. A property, any bettered property who is deemed eligible for an exemption under the provision of Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, may, upon notice of sewer assessment, enter into a deferral and recovery agreement with the town of Hingham. So basically, they could defer it to be paid, I think, basically, upon the settlement of their estate is how that would work. And this is, similar to other, other provisions, people that can't pay their taxes or whatever. So, town meeting has already adopted this, is my understanding. We found that in the regs.
Right. I think this is helpful just so people know, as a matter of public record, that it's in here, that the town has voted to accept the provisions of this statute, and it just kind of documents that's in effect in the town.
And the next one, Bob, is the one that you
Yeah.
were referring to earlier. So assessment payments for vacant lots. So someone that's assessed, they can extend the time of payment in accordance, again, with Chapter 83, Section 19. And payment can be extended for a maximum period of 5 years. So they can defer their payment, until they, for 5 years, or until they build on the property. But under that, so annually they will pay the interest at whatever the rate is set. So they'll pay interest each year until such time as either the 5 years expires, and then they have to start paying the betterment, or if they build on it within the 5-year time frame, then they'll start paying the...
What is that interest rate governed? Is that by the state, or is it interest rate?
The interest rate, so there's maximums established by the
It's in
statute.
the statute. So this is another one where the commission has some discretion on how you want it to operate. So the statute says the sewer commissioners of a town may extend the time for the payment of such assessments upon land which is not built upon until it is built upon, or for a fixed time. So that's the first part of it. And so what this is proposing is setting that fixed time in a regulation. So until built upon, or 5 years, with the 5 years being the later of. So if you don't build on it the first couple of years, you're not going to be assessed. If you build on it in year 3, you're going to have to pay. But if you wait till year 10, too bad, you have to pay at the end of year 5.
Right.
So what you're doing within the regulation is, setting a fixed time, which the statute allows you to do. And then the second half of the statute, or the section of the statute says, but interest at the rate of 4% per annum shall be paid annually upon the assessment from the time it was made, and the assessment shall be paid within 3 months after such land is built upon, or at the expiration of the fixed time. So, Jean had a question about, how will this work? But it's gonna, because I don't think it's really been done in Hingham, at least in the time that, she's been involved. But it is something that the statute allows the sewer commission to allow this deferred payment. So it's really a policy decision as to, do you want to allow property owners of vacant land who will not be getting immediate benefit of the sewer line that's now gone, through their, sewer area, a deferred time to pay. I would say that, this is something that, particularly looking forward to big projects such as in South Hingham, if a project was to go forward up there of any sort of sewer infrastructure, wastewater treatment plant, you're going to have a lot of vacant land that's going to have potentially very large assessments who are going to say, but we're not making any money off of this land, and they would probably want the benefit of this type of provision. So, it's something for the commission to consider. And granted, you can choose to adopt this, not adopt it. You could always, not adopt it and decide 6 months from now, 2 years from now, you want to adopt it. The regulations can be modified, as you deem appropriate. But I think that these provisions are kind of fairly standard in the towns that you've been advising.
You said 16%.
Yeah.
No.
Is there a fixed interest rate at that?
In the statute, it says 4%.
4%.
Which would need to be fixed
That's
here.
only levied on vacant land.
Vacant land, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the language in here does say interest rate provided for under applicable law.
Float?
Year to year, probably.
No.
I didn't hear the question.
Talk to Jean
Interest.
Montgomery. She might be able to help you out with that question down at Treasury. That's accounting stuff.
So that's the kind of the purview or policy decision for the commission. I think Steve put it in his draft because it's common for towns to make this available. But then again, the statute does say the sewer commissioners of a town may extend the time. It doesn't say, shall. So you can include it, not include it, fix the time, not, allow it to be 20 years until they bill. This is where
You have some
consider what you think is
latitude, yeah.
reasonable.
And what we presented here is pretty typical.
It's pretty common.
It's pretty common
Yeah,
of what other
and so
communities
that
do.
gives us the flexibility that the homeowners could need for a 20-year period. Also, is that correct? That chapter 427, is that?
Well, but it's two different things. So the chapter 427, which gives property owners the benefit of Hingham's tax rate, is for the interest if you defer your payment over the 20 years.
Okay.
This is, you don't have to start paying at all, but you are going under the statute, you're accruing interest at 4%, while if you let it go 5 years, you now have 4% on top being added on to
4%
that, and then you start paying, it's your X assessment plus that interest that's accrued over that period of
Well,
time.
they pay that as they go. So they pay the interest.
Is that 4%?
So their only annual payment over the 5 years is
Is
they have
interest.
to pay the interest.
Yes, you're right.
So they
the
pay
rate
that
for it
interest.
shall be paid annually. So they're
Yes.
making, it's like an interest-only
Payment.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
And then after the 5 years, then they would go to their 20-year assessment.
Okay.
And that's that interest-only payment, although not explicitly stated in the current draft, that is stated in Mass General Laws 8319. Is that, or did I miss?
The interest amount is in the statute. The amount of the interest rate is in the statute, but
No, the interest-only payment?
Yep.
I see that you can,
During the extension period, the property owner shall pay annually at the interest rate provided for under applicable law. The last sentence?
last sentence, okay, great, thank you.
4%.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So the last couple of things in here, 4.6 is just covering the town. There are some situations, if you're on unaccepted ways or private ways where you don't have easements per se, but there's a sewer in there, if you can't assess a betterment, you still have the ability to assess a privilege fee to the same value of a betterment. So it's just if you run into a situation where you've fronted a property, but just because of certain situations with the road situation, it being an unaccepted way or whatever, you can still assess the property the same that you're assessing the others. It's called a privilege fee instead of a
Privilege fee,
betterment.
okay.
Privilege to connect to the sewer.
All right.
I mean, Jean's question, she has two different comments. And I don't know, you spoke to her, Liz, so I'm trying to interpret the notes, but the betterment option not available after the fact, but we're not talking, so is that what she said?
Yeah.
We're not talking about a betterment as you explained, because, right?
By statute, for whatever reason, the property that's fronted can't be assessed a betterment. We can assess it a privilege fee at the time of construction.
Right. But then her comment is that a sewer privilege fee is not apportioned. So her belief is that you have to pay it all up front. But I think that the town often, even with real estate taxes, there's times where the tax collector's office will enter into payment agreements and not necessarily make people pay all front if they have hardship or some other reason. So, I'm not sure what she's basing that statement on. I don't know if it's something that you're comfortable kind of with, what Steve's presented here, if it's something you want to kind of think of, go back and check on, think about, before you adopt the language, but I'm not sure, and I didn't talk to her directly about any of this, so I'm not sure where her comment on that came
She
from.
thought the privilege fee meant betterment.
We can talk.
But the sewer, I have a question. The sewer privilege fee would only be levied at the time of connection.
Yeah.
Correct? So it's not.
So there's another.
It's a privilege fee to come into the system.
Yes.
It
It's
just so happens.
you can't assess that property a betterment for reasons of frontage that, although you're right in front of them, the town doesn't own the area where they are. So, or doesn't have an easement for that for whatever reason, which is uncommon, but that's a situation that just covers you. And it's something that that we've had in other agreements because it came up. And we found it in the regs how to cover those situations. So we just want to make sure you're covered if that situation arises. And in all those instances, that privilege fee is treated just like a betterment. You're just calling it something different. So they have the same abilities as far as payment, whether it be a lump sum or apportioned, the same as the betterment. She might be. There are the compensatory sewer privilege fees, which are after-the-fact fees for if somebody increases their use, at a future time.
So they might
That are different. You don't apportion those costs.
This is connecting to the system.
This is yeah. You're connecting into an existing property, connecting into the system.
Right.
We couldn't assess you a betterment, but you're going to pay your fair share, just like the other people on the street next to you that got sewered.
Right. And again, it gets into the whole issue of how much are you collecting?
Right.
Well, in the Weir River Sewer District, it was a capacity issue, but at the time of the Phase 2 construction, I have neighbors in my area who are nowhere near the sewer, but they wanted that capacity. So I believe that was called a privilege fee at the time. Those people were allowed capacity. They paid the same amount, even though the sewer didn't even go by their house, but they at a future date, if they ever want to hook in, however, by ever means, they can. I think it might be something like that. Might be a situation that would
That's
come up.
another situation, yeah. Similar.
Just something that we have in town right now.
They have to be within the gate that way.
So if the property does not enjoy frontage on a public way,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
not sure what that is.
It also depends on, the method you're using. When you're using the frontage method, then there's a rate, and it's a rate per foot of frontage, which is how the town did projects in the past. When you're doing the uniform unit method, once the sewer area is defined, if they have access to sewer, so you can, for example, you're gonna, again, just using the industrial park as an example, there's a lot of land up there. Not all of it is fronting on a public way. It's gonna be, you're gonna use a method that's different than the frontage method. Otherwise, you're not gonna. So, the privilege fees is not something that I believe has come up very often. I'm not familiar with how the Weir River Sewer District was done, because that was a number of years ago. But I'm not familiar with any recent uses of it in the town.
Yeah, and when this does come up for the South Hingham, we're probably going to have to tailor the betterment to that particular way, how we're going to better that up there. You made a good point
Right,
about
and
how we're
think-
going to
And I
do
think
that.
that's part of which I
Yeah.
know, and I know it's kind of ebbed and flowed, how active that is.
Yeah.
But I know that even going back years ago, when Katie Lacey was here, those were calculations she was working on with Roger and other people, and I know they would kind of come in periodically. And so, we're not trying to get any, project specific. But, that it's gonna, the projects may be different as they come forward in the town.
Yeah, and that's commercial and industrial, and we're trying to resolve just the residential in this
Yeah, but
district.
these sections, there are some sections in here that are going to apply to
Across the
all
board.
sewer betterment.
Okay,
So-
all right. Okay.
I don't know where, I think that's all that's proposed, I guess, for you guys for tonight. So I don't know, I'm not sure where you are on it, if there's any of the questions that were raised or sections that you want to think about further and come back another meeting, if you're comfortable with where you are and you want to move forward tonight, in which case we should probably just flip back through and make sure we've noted any of the changes that you want to make so that we have those documented for the record. But I don't know if it's whatever the commission's ready to do, or if you want to wait and think about any provisions or follow up on anything. It's,
Well, there didn't seem to be anything in there that was too disastrous, just wordage, I guess, and perhaps some things.
some change. I think, between comments we've received
Yeah.
tonight,
Yeah.
we did post this publicly. I know that there are some folks here that may be interested in offering some comments on the document as well. I think we should hear those. And then I think we've also passed along some comments as well that I think we should at least see one more cleaned up version certainly before we vote, and make sure that everything's
Yeah,
captured
yeah,
accurately.
something really
Covered,
clean.
yeah.
Yeah, I would want to see
so you
another.
could do, once you get all your comments that you want to incorporate.
Great. Yep, then I think we should.
Contact, Steve,
Yeah.
or I can help with Liz and do kind of a track changes kind of version, so you can see the markup and you can see it cleaner.
Yeah.
When's our next meeting?
See, the next,
And we can,
well, the next meeting is what, June
2nd?
2nd, was it, Kenny?
Excuse me?
Shouldn't they
So that's,
determine what they consider final
yeah, that's only a couple of weeks
Publish it.
away.
on the website or whatever
Yeah.
for 30 days and then
So-
vote it?
Well, so we went through, you weren't at the last meeting, right?
No.
So I had prepared for them what the procedure
The
is
procedures, oh, okay.
that they have to, you don't have an extra copy of that, do you? Liz? The procedure- I can give you my copy. Of what? Of the
The procedure?
procedure that applies for the commission on the adoption of the regulations.
think I've got it right here.
Yeah, I have it from last.
Susan?
Oh, I just wanted to give a copy to Steve.
Oh, okay.
But I have an extra.
I have one right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here you go. So this outlines the applicable special act and statutory, and then kind of process that they have to follow. in order to adopt it.
Yeah, we could put that on the agenda, right, for
June 2nd?
June 2nd.
June 2nd, yeah,
All right.
for a vote.
Yeah, okay.
So
Okay.
possible vote on the 2nd? I'll put it on
June
the
2nd,
agenda.
yeah.
Okay.
So we do need to determine which of Jean's comments we need to incorporate.
Right, I think once they've done, I think they're just waiting to see if there's more input, but then before maybe we move off this, we can just go flip back through and confirm for me, Steve, and Liz, which changes we're definitely putting into the draft.
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't know if they were done with the comments.
Any other comments?
I'm done.
Comment?
No, obviously, there's been other neighborhoods that have had betterments done all around town, right? But they use a different method for determining the betterment. Is that, am I correct in that?
They use the frontage.
My knowledge, based on what I've reviewed over the last, I want to say 2 years approximately, that I was asked, along with John Coughlin, who's our general town council, look at this, the past records is, early on, the town had the frontage, used the frontage method. In projects that have been done in the past,
Wherever.
the town meeting votes were not clear about the method that was going to be used, but there was a unit method type method unit. I mean, it's a little, because I think that what they did was say each property was a unit. And I guess questions have been raised as, well, were some of them two families, but they only were assessed as one. So it's not clear, although I never went back and checked in detail, but I think the intent in some past projects was to use the unit method. Whether it was done consistently, I don't know. But I think that the intent, from what I understand, was the unit method, so it's what the commission moved towards on the more recent projects that have been done in the town. That makes sense.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, we used the unit method on that. Okay, the last one we did. We selected unit.
Yes, well, on the town meeting vote on the Shipping Cottage Street was. I'm talking about projects that preceded that
okay.
one. But yes, the town meeting vote in the vote that was the 2013 vote specified unit method. Yeah.
I was talking about projects that,
Yeah, I thought you were talking going way back.
10, 20 years ago, whatever.
Yeah. So,
Whatever, however, people were charging the betterment, how they calculated that, and if they've done it one way, why would maybe they did do it this way. And I've never calculated where I'd be better off with a frontage method or a root method. I have no idea.
well, the town,
As to why we're-
right, so the town meeting, you know, the original special act and modifications to it said the town will use the frontage method or such other methods as are permitted by Massachusetts general law. That's what the special act says. And during the early constructions of the project, that the frontage method was used. There was a rate set per foot of frontage. later projects, and I want to say in the 80s and later.
The max
Word.
law would be the default law, right? It would, in the absence of something in the town.
No, so the
No.
statute, there's a
statute.
provision in the statute.
Statute.
There's a statute that governs with respect to method. And so it says, a town may adopt a system of sewerage and may provide that assessments shall be made upon owners of land, so that's where the owners come in, within such territory by a fixed uniform rate, which is otherwise known as the frontage method, or a rate based on a uniform unit method.
So it could be either.
Right, but it's the town, it says the town may provide. So the town, when you see town in a statute, that's generally deemed to be town meeting. That's the standard legislative interpretation of that word. But going forward, what these regulations are doing are saying, if it says, I think in section 1, that these are going to apply based on the method of assessment that the town meeting adopts. If it adopts unit method, these provisions will apply, and then all the other provisions kind of apply generically, because things such as getting a deferral or apportionment, they're going to apply regardless of the type of betterment method you're using. So I think that's how this is structured right now.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
You put something like this in front of town meeting, and, this many people are gonna really be interested in it.
All right, but if the statute says the town has to, then generally it's the town meeting has to. So whether the people are paying attention or not, like, you can't control, because if you need a town meeting vote, you need a town meeting vote. But then hopefully the work's being done up front before it gets to town meeting.
So how do these new regs apply to the Shipping Cottage project, or would they apply to the Shipping Cottage project?
Well, with the Shipping Cottage, based on the understanding I have, is that the calculations are going to be, even if you just apply the statute without regulations, because there's no requirement in the statute that you have regulations, the calculations would come out the same. So it's not really going to impact it. Based on the number of lots and units, and there's 1-2 family, applying the statute, you come out the same place.
Any other questions?
You want to walk
So do
through
you
the
want to just
comments
walk
one more
through real
time?
quickly and see what got marked up?
So what was Jean's first comment?
So Jean's first comment, I think, was in 2.1, she's making the comment of where it says shall designate the owner of each parcel. She's saying it should be against the property, not the owner, but I was just reading section where it says shall assess the owner of each property. I think the language you have in here is pretty standard for
is.
bylaws and regulations.
Yeah.
And it's always the preceding January 1st.
Right.
Owner of record.
I don't know that there's, I don't.
Need to change?
I looked at this and I didn't find anything that indicated that the language that CETA's proposed would be wrong. And it is pretty much the standard language in communities for these types of regulations or bylaws. So I don't know that, did anyone propose a change to that?
No, I think we should go along with it then. Go along with the language that's there.
That's here, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Her next comment was on, I don't think there was any other markups. Her next comment was on 3.2.3, where I think her concern is you can end up with a much larger assessment. Steve has indicated that based on all of the regulations and towns that he's worked on, that this is a pretty standard way of going about it. The language is consistent with the statute with respect to
So
doing it consistently with zoning.
So the concern would be, so we go by an undeveloped lot, and it's 3 acres, and it's 1 acre zoning, and there's the frontage there to build 3 lots. So you assume it's 3 units, and then they dispute it and confirm that they're only able to or planning to build 2 units, and they get their betterment reduced from 3 to 2. Now you've no longer recovered 100% of the cost, because in your calculation you assumed you were. I think that's where she's going with it.
Well, she's saying there's no way for them to get back, no way to get back over assessment. I don't know if she means there's no way for the property owner to get it back, or whether the town has a shortfall.
It's the property owner.
It's the property. So she's concerned that a property owner may be assessed and then fine, either choose not to, which that's a personal election, which I don't know, or they may find that for other reasons. At the time of the assessment, but maybe let's say they have the driest, flattest piece of land in Hingham, and they could build 8 lots, but then they pay the assessment, they don't build on it for 10 years and the zoning changes. Well, it's you don't get it back.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if there is an example of a more conservative way to do this that then is.
Well, the tricky part is the 100% betterment, right? Because you could assess a vacant lot, 1 unit,
right,
with the understanding that you'll revisit it when they develop it, and you know what they develop it to. So as being vacant, you're making an assumption on what they're going to build it to, but because you're trying to collect 100% of the cost through the betterments, you need to be pretty close to the units so that you're getting it right. So I think this language covers you.
And the town may not always do 100% betterments. In the Weir River project, the town did not do 100% because it was deemed as an environmental need and didn't want to put the burden on the property owners. You know, there's also, or maybe a discussion another day, especially for the newer commission members, the provisions of the original act. So what happens is, towns got special acts. And at the time, the language of the special act mirrored what Mass General Law said. But what happens is then you have a special act and it's kind of frozen in time, but the Mass General Laws evolves. So there's a provision in the special act that says that the town, this is, I think it relates only to the North Sewer District, but I'd have to check, that the town can't assess less than 25% or more than 75%. It kind of puts it on the town that the town has to pick up 25%. And that's what Mass General Laws said. And then Mass General Laws evolved later saying, no, the towns can assess 100% if they want. So there's a later amendment to the special act that says that and it's very convoluted, that says in calculating the percentage that the town has paid, you can look at the build out of the entire district over time. So it's almost like a rolling calculation where you're keeping up over time with has the town paid at least its share under the original special act. And I think that math was done in connection with Shipping Cottages, for example, by Gene Montgomery before Shipping Cottage got started. Randy, do you remember all that, going through that?
I don't remember that.
You know what, I think there was members of the advisory committee who were involved when we were trying to sort that all out. But it's something at some point, and this gets to a bigger issue of getting past kind of getting the global regulations in place, of going back and maybe revisiting the special act and seeing if it makes sense at some point to line it up with Mass General Laws. But, you know, so it gets complicated. I don't want to sidetrack from what we're doing tonight. But to Steve's point, once you do 100% betterment, then this idea, if you do a more conservative betterment and say there are only one lot, even though it's undeveloped, and we do 100% assessment, now we've collected all the money, well, wait a minute, now they can divide it into however many lots, 2 lots, 3 lots, 8 lots, it doesn't matter. Whether or not you can connect, you can get that equivalent of a betterment. If you've already collected the full amount that you've paid for the project, then it may just be they're going to just pay a house connection fee, not a privilege fee, not a betterment. So, it's all a matter of, are you conservative in favor, which would benefit a property owner, and then maybe they have a benefit down the road because now they've got more lots to pay smaller assessment, but which means all the other people will pay slightly more. Right. Or are you conservative in the favor of, we're going to assume they can do the maximum, collect all that money from them, and then, and then that benefits everybody else who got a slightly less assessment, but they might have paid a lot more than they'll actually ever realize in sewer use.
But it's based on what they own for land. I mean, that's the bottom line. So the way we've got it written, it covers you.
Right, and so it goes
That's what they could do. They could build 3 houses there.
Right, so it goes back to, in the same way we're talking about, you pay a sewer rate based on how many gallons of water you come out of your faucet, whether they end up in the pipe or not. As long as you're establishing a neutral standard, right, and the language is kind of at least consistent with the language in the statute that says shall based on the zoning then in effect. I mean, and as Steve said, it's fairly common in other communities. But, some of it's policy, philosophy, kind of point of view,
It's not an exact science. It's not.
I think this covers you better for the concerns that we've discussed, in our opinion. But you do have the latitude, however you want to word it. But.
All right, so based on all of that, I don't know if you have anything proposed, if you want to do anything with 3.2.3 or you want to
leave it as is.
Leave it as is.
Yeah.
All right, 4.1, we just have that one change.
Collector.
Assessor to collector. 4.3, chapter 83 should be chapter 80, and then the sentence that starts the time period for payments to be deleted.
Yep.
And then I think we should make any other changes. I think that was it. Or I don't know if you guys have.
That's what I have.
Yeah.
Notes, so. Yep. Okay. So we can make
So you're
these.
continuing this till
June 2nd.
June 2nd.
So.
We can make these edits, and you want to replace it on the
Website.
Website.
Right.
The
That was my
updated.
right.
question.
And like I said, I mean, it's not like you've closed the discussion or anything, so if you have any further thoughts between now and then, it could always get
Good idea.
tweaked at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I think the intent
nice
is
and clean.
that this would be the final draft, and the intent would be that we would vote on it.
Yes.
Right, June 2nd. Put it on the agenda.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.